everyone. Welcome back to episode 15 of the Just Sayin Podcast. Sutton and I were just talking about it. We are almost halfway through the season. After this weekend, we're halfway through. It's week 6. Week 6 is upon us. Today, we're going to be previewing some games. I think there's 7 on the docket here for us. Also interesting, we're going to be giving our SEC QB rankings. If you can remember episode 3, we gave our SEC tiers.
Feels like
Today
just
we're
another day ago. Just another day.
yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Today we're doing our rankings, and I don't know about you, but I only had 5 QBs in the same tier. So there's been a lot of movement for myself. And then also we got the best bets section back. Yes, I did say best bets because I went 10 for 11 and Sutton here went 8 for 11 last week. So it's back. You should maybe put your money where we tell you to. So with that being said, if you want to go ahead and kick off
This week's a little different maybe for best bets though. I've got 4 games and 2 players instead of 3 and 3. So I'm a little bit more confident on the game side this week. But I think there's really no other place to start it than the best game of the week that's going to be coming up this week.
Rivalry, baby.
It's Oklahoma and Texas in Dallas. Neutral site game for both teams, as it always is. The 2 newcomers to the SEC. It's going to be an exciting showdown, and one I think a lot of people might be, including myself, surprised at the outcome. I do think this is actually going to be a close game. Think about it. Oklahoma's got revenge on their minds this week. I mean, they got beat bad. What was it, 49-0 last year? And they didn't have Dylan Gabriel, and it showed that they need him to compete. Thankfully, this year they have a good backup quarterback, whereas last year they didn't. But Dylan Gabriel and that Oklahoma team's got they're pretty salty. Salt's in the wound there, and I'm sure they're wanting to clean that thing up as nice as they can. And we've seen Texas be vulnerable this year. So they have gone on the road and beat Alabama. So it's a big win, probably the biggest win of the season for any team in college football. But we've seen it be vulnerable against Wyoming. So I wonder what do we get the Wyoming Texas this week, or do we get the Alabama Texas, Jake?
I mean, I hate Texas as much as the next guy, but you can't hate on them. They've been very consistent this year in a year of inconsistencies. I know you can look at that Wyoming game, especially at the first half, but outside of that, they have been consistent all year. They've been probably the best team, taking last year out of the equation. But I was super surprised. And again, this is ESPN FPI. If you use this to look at rankings, never do it again. It's garbage. But it has Oklahoma 55%, rounding up, 55% chance to win. I was surprised by that.
I'm very surprised by that.
But yeah, you mentioned Texas struggling against Wyoming. I mean, Oklahoma, they struggled against SMU the first half. They struggled against Cincinnati. Last week, who did they play? They struggled last week a little bit, I think.
Tulsa, maybe?
No. They struggled last week against Iowa State. They struggled in the first half again. I know they won by 30, but still. So I'm really interested how this game is going to go down. Obviously, this is the game of the week. We're going to have a tailgate at the Kentucky-Georgia game, and this is obviously going to be on at noon. I'm so excited for it. And I was watching Josh Pate earlier. I think it was last night, maybe this morning, and he referenced Dylan Gabriel. You said how he didn't play last year, and they got absolutely boat raced. Yeah. He has to play the game of his life, whereas Quinn Ewers does not. He has a lot more a larger margin of error, whereas Dylan Gabriel, he has to be elite because defense isn't as good as Texas. Weapons aren't as good as Texas. Nothing on Oklahoma's team is as good as Texas. So Dylan Gabriel gonna have to play the game of his life. I think he's really good. I think he's a very competent runner and a great thrower of the football. Georgia wanted him back when he was in school in Hawaii as a 3-star lefty QB. So I'm going to go ahead and give my prediction. The line is -6.5 Texas. I have Oklahoma covering, and I'm also going to go Oklahoma to win.
Wow.
I think it's going to be a great game. And like you said, I think Oklahoma has revenge in mind. And it's one of those games. It's kind of like the Iron Bowl, kind of like the Deep South's oldest rivalry where, it doesn't matter how these teams stack up against each other, it's always going to be a great game. And this is the first time I heard since 2011, both these teams are undefeated coming into this game. So it's going to be a great game. Yeah. I'm super excited. And I think Dylan Gabriel can get it done. I think he has a Heisman moment this weekend. Not saying he's going to win it, but I think he has it and has a chance to win it after this weekend.
He's definitely been flying under the radar. I mean, I'm looking at his stats right here. 118 for 157, almost 1,600 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions through 5 games. I mean, there's not many other stats you can get this better than that. I mean, Caleb Williams, yes, his are better, but Caleb's also played 6 games this year, and he has a lot more weapons on offense. So if Dylan Gabriel has a really good game and they beat Texas, I say he might be my Heisman favorite by the end of the weekend if he has a really clean game and they win. Here's another stat for you. OU is 5-0 against the spread this year as well. So I'm going to go with you. I am going to pick OU to cover, but I think Texas is just too good, and I've got Texas winning the game, maybe like a 2 or 3 point game. And I think it might come down to the last play of the game. This is a particular game that really could come down to Bert Auburn's leg. And if it comes down to Bert Auburn's leg, I know he's had some struggles this year and last year, but he's going to end up being a crunch time kicker this week, and I've got him with the game sealing field goal. And as time expires to give Texas the win, and I just think this Texas team is too complete. This is a big test for the Oklahoma defense. I mean, Brent Venables' second year at Oklahoma. I guess he's got a freshman class in there. I really want to see what he's done and given an extra year with the defense, and this is going to be a monster test for them. So we'll see what ends up happening, but I do think Texas will edge this one out. But Oklahoma covers. So
yeah, Josh Pate did reference it. He said Texas was a year ahead of Oklahoma where they're at in each of their respective programs, and I do agree with him. I just think Oklahoma finds a way. I don't know how. I just think they do. Whether it's a lucky 80-yard touchdown or an unfortunate fumble for Texas, I just think it's going to happen somewhere. And part of me, it's not even because of Oklahoma. It's just because I'm still thinking about the Texas of the past, and they haven't been a consistent team. And so since they've been consistent for 5 weeks, since they have been probably the number one team, it's going to come to an end at some point, in my opinion. They could prove me wrong. And on, Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, whenever we're doing the next show, I'll be eating my words. But, I just have that feeling that Oklahoma is going to be able to pull it out.
Now let's shift focus to the second biggest game of the weekend. Also another game that's happening within the state of Texas, and that's Alabama at Texas A&M. The 11th-ranked Crimson Tide going in 4-1. Both teams are 4-1. So whoever wins this game is going to be in the driver's seat for the SEC West, which is kind of crazy to think. And we know this line is sitting out. It was 2.5 earlier in the week.
1.5 now.
It's 1.5 now. Wow. Okay. So this is going to be a tight game. Another game that might come down to the last play. And 2 years in a row, this game has came down to the last play of the game. And I'm going to predict it's going to happen again this year. I do think it will come down to the last play of the game. Speaking of Josh Pate, he was talking about how Texas A&M has no problem with Max Johnson going out there limitless. I mean, he's a guy that if I was an A&M fan, I would have complete trust in him. He showed me in the past that he can take care of the football. He can throw the deep ball. He's not as mobile as Wegman, or definitely not as mobile as Jalen Milroe. But if he's got a clean pocket, he's definitely going to be a guy that you got to watch out for. He can make really any throw on the field. Has great upside, commands the offense really well, a smart guy. I'm not going to lie, Jake. This is the game I'm very nervous. I do not feel great about going into this game. Now, I will say I do feel a little bit better than I did in 2021. Just because in 21, when we lost, we were 21-point favorites. We went into this game sky high. Everyone was saying Alabama's going to probably win the national championship, coming off a national championship year. And that was the first Saban assistant to beat him, was Jimbo in 2021. Obviously, I know Alabama's team isn't as good as they've been in the past, and losing this game is a thing that is very, very likely to happen. I mean, it really could happen. I think ESPN FPI even has Alabama. No, they have Alabama with 66%. Yeah, that doesn't make me feel good at all. Okay, so we won't take a look at that. But my thing is, how is the Alabama O-line gonna hang on? Because the Texas A&M defense has the highest sack rate in the country. I think it's like they average like every 14 plays they get a sack or something like that, which is pretty crazy. And Alabama's offensive line has been the worst performing unit on the field this year. So I'm concerned. I'm really concerned about that. But if the pocket breaks down, we know Jalen Milroe can do plenty of things. And if Jalen Milroe starts off on the running the ball in this game, kind of like he did in the Mississippi State game, where he breaks a few big time runs, it's going to favor Alabama. And if Alabama gets out in front by 14 points, you might can call this game over, because if Alabama gets out 14 points, they're going to kind of have more of a relaxed offense. And that's exactly what we want to do with Tommy Rees. We want to run the football, and we're just going to control the time possession. But if A&M gets out in front pretty early, I think Alabama could crawl from behind, but we'd have to crawl slowly and methodically, because we're not going to throw the ball. So, and like we've talked about, Alabama's got a national championship caliber defense. I don't think Texas A&M has a side of the ball that's national championship caliber. So if Alabama's defense shows up, which I think they will, I think this is going to be a very low scoring game. I actually have this game. The final score prediction that I have is 20-17. I think Alabama will be tied up at 17, and on the last play of the game, Will Riker will kick a field goal to win the game for Alabama. I do think the Crimson Tide escaped College Station with a win, amidst a lot of people saying we won't. This team has a little bit different of a feel than I think past teams do, and I'm confident in them. I feel confident. Milroe's been progressing. We talked about that in previous shows, so I do feel confident that we'll pull one out. With that being said, if we don't, it's not going to be the end of the world for me, because I mean, Alabama, like the spread is very close. Really, this is a toss-up kind of game, in my opinion. I can see several ways of A&M winning this game. I can see several ways of Alabama winning this game. So yes, it'll be upsetting if we were to lose, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. And just the day and age of college football, it is. So
Yeah, and you mentioned it. For my SEC QB rankings, I have Connor Wegman and Max Johnson right there together. I just put a slash by their names. It doesn't matter who starts this game. I think they're equivalent in my mind.
yes.
Maybe Connor Wegman, you can do a couple more things, but essentially they're not the same QB, but they give you the same results, in my opinion. So like you mentioned, I don't think they lose too much with Wegman being out. So Max Johnson, very competent, can really get it done. My thing is, you've heard me talk about how much I hate A&M getting overrated, things like that. I just don't understand when someone looks at this team, how can they beat Bama? Because you look at the game against Auburn, where, I mean, I don't know what was the score of that game? 27-10. 27-10. But A&M couldn't really move the ball that well. I mean, they were taking over. I wish I had the stat.
They were taking deep shots. I think a couple of their touchdowns were deep passes from Max Johnson.
Yeah, they were, but no, they were taking the ball over right around the 40-yard line every single time, because that Auburn offense couldn't do anything against A&M. And they were still anemic the whole first half. And second half, once Connor Wegman got hurt, they started to move the ball a little bit better. But still, they weren't great. And so when you go and play against a better Alabama defense than the Auburn defense, they're not going to be able to move the ball this game. I don't care how loud Kyle Field is. Offensively, they're going to struggle against Alabama's defense. Alabama's defense has shown they're a top 5 unit in all of college football. And yeah, that O-line has been really bad for Bama. It's been really bad. I think they've given up 20 sacks so far, which is a whole lot. But I don't know. I think Alabama is still Alabama. Nick Saban is still Nick Saban. And he's going to go in there. And I do think it comes down to the last play, but it kind of in a different sense. I think Bama's up by 7, and A&M has to try to go and score. And maybe they try to throw a Hail Mary to tie it, but it doesn't work. I think Alabama has to score 14 to win this game. And so you're not really asking much of Jalen Milroe. You're not asking much of the offense. You're just asking to, not go 3 and out, in my mind. All you have to do is have 2 touchdowns, in my opinion, because this A&M offense is not good. Their defense is pretty good, and they're going to be able to get after Jalen Milroe, I think. But he's going to probably be able to break an explosive run, maybe an explosive pass. And, I think that's all you're going to need this game. So I think Alabama's going to cover. I think they win by 7.
So the over-under in this game is 46.5. I definitely think it's going to be under that. Definitely think it's going to be under that. And like you said, you don't really see a way Alabama loses. I do. And that is if sacks can just continue to pile up on the quarterback and maybe a couple of turnovers on offense that gives them plus field goal position, that's an easy way Alabama could lose.
The only thing about that is that's exactly what happened to Auburn, and their offense still looked atrocious.
But
and their offense isn't nearly as bad as Auburn, so I just don't see that. I don't see that.
And I see the run game really helping out Alabama too. The running back run game and the quarterback run game. Both of them, because if the pocket breaks down, Milroe's gone. And we saw that a lot even in last year's Alabama A&M game. But make no mistake about it, that crowd is going to be wild. One of the best atmospheres in college football for sure. And that's definitely going to contribute to how this game is played. If this game was in Tuscaloosa, I wouldn't really be concerned at all. I think we would probably win by 2 touchdowns. But since it's in College Station, and we know how Alabama's been on the road in recent years. But another thing is A&M doesn't have a great run offense. So it's all about how much does this Alabama defensive secondary bend and not break. And I think they will bend a little bit, but I don't think they'll break. And that's why I think Alabama ends up winning the game. I set a field goal. The line's at 1.5, so Alabama wins. Alabama covers. It's going to be a tight one, though. It has been for the last 2 years, and it will be for a third year.
I do want to say what I want to see from A&M's defense. Do not rush 3 on 3rd and long. I wish I had the stats, but I can tell you for a fact after watching Ole Miss and Mississippi State do it, it does not work. Yeah, you might get them off the field once, which you should on 3rd and long. But for the most part, either the middle of the field is going to be wide open for Jalen Milroe to run, or corners and safeties are going to have to cover for 10 seconds, and they're just not going to be able to do that. So I want to see A&M, especially, I mean, we talked about it. This O-line has not been what you thought it was going to be. It has not been good at all. I want to see A&M try to get after them and show an effort to try to win instead of try not to lose, because I feel like that's what both Ole Miss and Mississippi State were doing. So I want to see A&M come out aggressive. You talked about the deep passes, how they beat Auburn. I want to see them try to do that against Alabama. If they don't, I don't even see them keeping close with this game, because they have to be aggressive to win.
All right, so both the first games we previewed, we both have we have the same prediction: Oklahoma covering and Alabama covering. But you have Oklahoma winning that game, and I don't. Well, how about the Georgia Bulldogs hosting the Kentucky Wildcats? Battle of the 5-0s in the East. Yeah, number 20 Kentucky, number 1 Georgia. 15-point spread at home for Georgia. It's up from 14.5 earlier this week. How are we feeling, Jake, headed into game week 6?
Let's take it to Athens. You talked about battle of 2 of the unbeatens, because Missouri is also undefeated right now.
Another great game for them this weekend. We'll get that one next.
We'll talk about that one. I have a different feeling than a lot of people do about this game. Kentucky coming off a great high, beating Florida, destroying Florida, and running for 329 yards, I think. They ran all over Florida, and we just gave up 200 plus rushing yards for the first time since 2018, which is absolutely insane to think about. So a lot of people think Kentucky's going to come into Athens. They're going to run over us. Not a lot of people are thinking they're going to upset us, but a lot of people think they're going to cover. That's how Vegas is making their money this week, by setting a line. It was 14.5. Like you said, it went up to 15. I think Georgia covers. We're 0-5 against the spread this year. We have not been great. I think Georgia covers, and we cover handily. This Kentucky offense, although their run game is multiple, they do a lot of different looks. You're asking, because all they did against Florida was they just ran over their D-line and their linebackers. Auburn didn't do that against us. They attacked us on the edge, which I don't think Kentucky has the ability to do, especially with Devin Leary back there at QB. He poses no threat as a runner. And also this year, by the way, it's looked at, he poses no threat as a passer either. So you're putting all the weight on Ray Davis's shoulders. And our D-line is good. Like I said, people think Auburn ran all over us because of our D-line. Our D-line did what they were supposed to. Our linebackers played well. Our outside linebackers and our star did not play well, in my opinion. So a lot of people think they're going to be able to get it done. I don't. I think we win by probably 21. And also, I mean, Carson Beck is sneakily having a really good season, and not a lot of people know that. I'll talk more about it later in our SEC rankings, but I think he's a great quarterback, and he's performed great this year. And also, when you have Brock Bowers on the field, just get it to number 19. I don't care if you throw it 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage and let him do the work. I don't care if you try to throw it 45 yards past the line of scrimmage. Just get the ball into number 19's hands, and he's going to do something with it. So I have us winning by 21 this week. Actually, I'll say 20. I'll say 20.
Well, we're going to continue to stay on the same track, even though Georgia's 0-5 against the spread this week. It's not going to against the spread this year. Excuse me. It's not going to matter. They'll get their first spread victory this week against Kentucky. And I feel bad for Kentucky. They get all this hype. They're 5-0. Mark Stoops getting some looks over there from the national scope. Well, they'll be right off the national scope this week after they lose by 21-24 to Georgia. It just sets up bad for them. It's just a very bad matchup for the way they want to play football. And they could end up going 11-1 this year, 10-2, and still play really good football. But when you match up against a team that your strength is playing up against their strength, it's not always going to go well. And Kentucky, Ray Davis is a great runner, got a really good O-line over there. But Georgia's D-line, their trademark is stopping the run. And I know you just mentioned first time since like 2018, more than 200 rush yards, which is insane. But you have to think 73 of those rush yards came on one play that Peyton Thorne had down the sideline. So you can't really determine all of those rushing yards when you have an explosive play like that in the run game. It happens in the pass game too. People just like to point it out more in the run game. But what was Kentucky able to do against what was Kentucky able to, who'd they play last? Florida. They gashed them right up the middle, right? What was Auburn able to do successfully against Georgia? They gashed them on the outside. Kentucky's strength is gashing a team up the middle, and that plays straight into Georgia's defensive strength. And This week, I definitely think Ray Davis has maybe even around 100 yards rushing, maybe like 70 or 80. I think I'll say he's going to have around 70 or 80 yards rushing. Because he'll be able to do it because he's a skilled player. He's a really good player. And Kentucky's always got good running backs. But the thing is, Devin Leary hasn't had to play well this year for them to win games. He's going to this week. He's going to have to play well, but I just don't think they have enough weapons on the outside, especially not enough to create separation from the Georgia secondary. Sadly for Leary, I think he's got a ton of talent, may even be better a quarterback than Will Levis was for them. But he has not been able to take care of the football. And if he does not take care of the football against Georgia even one time, it's gonna be bad. And I'm predicting a multi-interception game from him. So I think Georgia wins. Georgia wins pretty handily, and they cover their 15-point spread.
And I've been watching Brooks Austin talk about it. He's a beat writer for Georgia. He's mentioned it. Kentucky has some really good players out there on the O-line and D-line. And in my opinion, Kentucky's a top 4 team in the SEC. I'd have them probably behind. I still think LSU is a better team than Ole Miss. I just think it was the home field advantage. But either way, I'd probably have them behind Georgia, Bama, and LSU. I'd have them at 4. I think they would beat Ole Miss. But they're a good team. It's just exactly like you said. When their strength is matched up against our strength, I don't think it bodes well for them when we have first round talent all the way around the board, and they do not, sadly. So, I mean, I love Kentucky. They're like the one SEC East team outside of Vandy, of course, that I don't hate. Because Mark Stoops, he's a great coach. He's a tremendous coach.
He's awesome.
Kentucky is such a hard place to coach. And before him, they've never been anything. So he's done a great job with that program. And I wish he was somewhere else that was capable of winning championships. Because I have a bunch of respect for him.
Oh, yeah.
Kentucky's just not in a place to even.
Well, think about it. They've really become a destination for transfers. And I think that's going to be kind of his calling card in the new era of college football. And you think of Kentucky, you think of them as a basketball school, but now they're adding transfer quarterbacks like Will Levis and Devin Leary. I mean, you think, who are they going to get next year? That's going to end up being probably a really good player. And they usually always have a really good O-line. They have a really physical D-line. I mean, the one word I think you can describe them is physical. And it always goes back to this. The longest tenured head coach in the SEC is Nick Saban. Second is Mark Stoops. I think this is his 12th year at Kentucky, which is crazy to think. He's set a great culture there. They've got great expectations. I mean, for you to go 9-3 or 10-2 or 8-4 at Kentucky, that's a win. In a tough SEC conference, that's a win. I think if Mark Stoops was a head coach at Vanderbilt, they'd probably go 7-5 or 8-4. I mean, I really think he's that good of a coach, and he's set that good of a culture over there. So it's no disrespect to them when I say Georgia's going to win this game handily, but you can't expect to be the best team, one of the best teams in the country, a national championship contending team, when you're playing right against their strength. Your strength is theirs, and you don't have the same athletes they do. Just kind of what it boils down to.
So yeah, let's take this to another game in the SEC. We've referenced both these teams, both the Tigers, LSU at Missouri this weekend. This is a very intriguing game to me. LSU is -5.5. That went down. It was -6.5.
People loving Missouri.
Do what?
Said people are loving Missouri right now.
So you have a battle between two top 3 SEC QBs, in my opinion, Jaden Daniels and Brady Cook. They're both studs. And then also a battle between two top 3 SEC wide receivers, in Malik Neighbors and Luther Burden. Both those guys are
You may be able to say like all 3 top 3 receivers in the SEC are in this game, because Brian Thomas Jr. has played at a level that you could make that argument. You really could.
Yeah, Xavier Legette is still there. He's had a tremendous
season. He is.
Evan Stewart as well.
Brian Thomas Jr. might be a top 5 SEC receiver though. You may have 3 of the top 5 in the SEC in this game.
Yeah. And also Missouri still has Theo Weiss. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's no slouch either. He's a transfer from Oklahoma, was a 5-star recruit, had over 100 yards in their last game. I don't know how this game is going to go.
LSU, I've been seesawing on this for the last 30 minutes.
LSU coming off a big loss. Missouri, like we said, still unbeaten. And Missouri's a good team. They have a defense that still hasn't figured it out, because they have a lot of players on that defense. They have 2 probably top 15 corners, a pretty physical D-line and linebackers. They have Tyron Hopper, a transfer from Florida, who's played pretty well. And they just haven't figured it out. And Cody Schrader is a good running back. He might be a top 5 running back in the SEC, which honestly doesn't say too much, but still, I really like him. He's really fast, and I think he was a transfer from some D2 school where he rushed for over 2,000 yards. So Missouri has a potent offense. It's just, will they be able to stop LSU on defense? I do think they have a better defense than Ole Miss. So I think that says good things for them. And also they're not playing at Death Valley, which is the biggest benefit for them.
Yes.
It's -5.5 LSU.
Wait, let me let you ponder this while
you go ahead. Please.
I'll let you ponder. So looking at the stats here, and I'm just going to look specifically at defense here. LSU has allowed and this is an average of 260 yards of passing per game. They've also allowed about 170 yards rushing per game, so a total of about 430 yards on defense. Now, yes, that is inflated, especially because of the Ole Miss game, but that is a ton of yardage, okay? And then you got to think about Missouri. They allow about 242 yards in the pass game, but look at this, Jake. Only 75 yards in the rush game per game. I think that could be a difference maker. I think this Missouri team not only has a better defense than Ole Miss does, but I also think their offense is almost just as good.
I agree.
The only thing I think that is different from Missouri, which they may even have better players on offense than Ole Miss does. Schematically wise, obviously you're not going to get a better scheme than Lane Kiffin. There really isn't one, maybe besides Steve Sarkisian. But I think, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, Eli Drinkwitz, we talked about last week, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, they did not have their big-time win under him, and last week they got it. Eli Drinkwitz is going to get it this weekend, and LSU will lose back-to-back games. They'll go to 3-3 this year. I've got the Missouri Tigers covering the 5.5, and I've got them winning, and I think they're going to win by a touchdown. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. They're going to go back and forth, but I think that Missouri defense gets 1 or 2 more stops than that LSU defense, especially them being at home is going to help them a lot. And it's another reason why you should probably go for Missouri in this game. ESPN FPI is favoring LSU 70%. So I'm also going to go Missouri to win this game. I'm going to go for them to cover, obviously. Would be a humongous win for Eli Drinkwitz. 6-0 start from Missouri would be – I would never have thought that was going to happen.
It is so difficult to bet or to predict against Jaden Daniels because he's the best quarterback in the SEC. I don't think it's super close. But I like it, Sutton. I think Missouri's going to win. I think they're going to cover, obviously.
Let's go. Go Mizzou.
Eli Drinkwitz he's like kind of a clown, kind of a good coach. I don't know what to think of him. He's a funny guy.
Number one team, General. Who is it? Oh, they got some dogs up front for sure, Texas. But the number one team coming
What
up
is this?
taking on the Maryland Terrapins this weekend.
Oh, we've got Pat McAfee joining the show, guys. I'm kidding. I don't know how that started. I had a video play. My bad.
Yeah, Eli Drinkwitz, good coach. Very weird guy though. I think he gets his signature win this week as well. And he's going to be 6-0 after this week. I just think Brady Cook and Luther Burden go off again. I think Luther Burden has over 130 yards. And like you said, I think Mizzou just needs one stop. Actually, let's say two stops. I think Mizzou's going to get stopped once. I think LSU is going to get stopped twice. And this is probably going to be a 3-7 point game. Give me the Mizzou Tigers going 6-0.
Wow. Both of us haven't strayed from this. We've gone on the same path both times. Here's where we might go different. All right, my 3 favorite teams in college football, we know who they are. We got Alabama at number 1. We've got a humongous gap. Then we have Washington State Cougars, and then we also have the Maryland Terrapins. All 3 teams playing in huge games this week. So let's go up to Columbus, Ohio, where the Maryland Terrapins, the 5-0 Maryland Terrapins go into Ohio State to play the 4-0 Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, Ohio State did have their bye weekend this past week, so they've got an extra week to prepare for Coach Loxley and Talia Tagovailoa coming in there. But what has happened, Jake, the last 3 games, the last 3 sections of our bets category? I have bet on Maryland to cover the spread, and they have in all 3 games. Currently, the spread was at 18.5. Now it is at, let's see here,
20.
It's at 20. Even better. Maryland's going to cover this spread. They're going to go in there. They're definitely not going to beat Ohio State, but I think it's like a 14-point loss for Maryland. I think they keep it close. They've got good enough. They're good enough on offense. I think they're also all right on defense to where this is Ohio State offense still who hasn't hit their stride. Maybe they do coming out of the bye week this week. That would be very sad to see. But this is the year I think Maryland knocks off one of the big 3. I think they win one game between Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. I don't think it's going to be this game. If I had to lean towards a game, I'm going to lean more towards the Penn State game. But I definitely think they have a shot to win this game if they have to hit on all cylinders. But I do think they will cover this game. So I've got Maryland covering the 20 at Ohio State this weekend. Still taking the loss though.
Yeah. I know this is one of your teams. 20 points is a lot. I thought it was going to be like a 16.5 point spread. Yeah. 20 points is a lot. But like you said, OSU is coming off their bye week where they beat Notre Dame the week before. So I think they've had a lot of time to rest and get prepared for this game. And also, Tali is not good. I don't care what the stats say. He's not good. He hasn't played anyone. He plays in a very pass-friendly system and hasn't played the defense. OSU has a tremendous defense. They're top 5 in the nation, in my opinion. I think they're going to force him to try to make throws that he just can't make. And they're going to benefit from him. And so I just said 20 points is a lot. I think Ohio State finds out who they are. And they have a great week, potentially ends up as a number 1 team for me at the end of this week if it goes how I think it will. I think they win. I think they cover. We just saw Brock Bowers have his dark horse Heisman moment, I would say, where now he's in the conversation to be a dark horse. Marvin Harrison, because both Marvin Harrison and Brock Bowers were coming into the season talked about the same, where they were the best 2 position players outside of QBs, and can they win the Heisman? Marvin Harrison kind of has, I know he has 336 yards, but it feels like he hasn't done anything this year. I think this is his game where he takes over and has over 150 yards, multiple touchdowns. I think this is that for him. And I have Ohio State covering the 20 points.
Well, let's shift it to my second favorite team, and that's Washington State. My current Heisman front runner, Cam Ward, 106 for 142 this year, almost 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns, no picks. I think the key in this game is obviously they're facing a freshman quarterback in Dante Moore, who's running a Chip Kelly system that really is fit for his skill set. But this offense still hasn't found their legs either. Last time they were out, they lost to Utah and got embarrassed pretty much. And then they only scored one touchdown in a 14-7 loss. Obviously, the Washington State defense isn't as good as Utah's. But I do think the Washington State defense is a lot better than people give them credit for. We saw Washington State play really well against Oregon State, and then Oregon State went and beat that same Utah team that UCLA lost to. Now, Washington State is on the road at UCLA, but I think that, and obviously I can't root against my second favorite team, right? I think they're actually not favored in this game, which is kind of bewildering to me.
Crazy.
3.5 point line. Okay, so it's still 3.5 UCLA. Yeah, Washington State's going to win. Obviously, cover this game. They are hitting the really hard part of their schedule, though. They're about to play a gauntlet, so don't really know how that's going to work out for them in this game or towards the end of the season. But they've got some weapons on offense, and I think their defense is good enough to hold this UCLA offense. I think they win by 10 points, and I think they improve to 5-0 on the year and continue to rise in the polls. We'll see, though. I think if Washington State played like an Oklahoma right now, I think that'd be a really good game. I mean, and at a neutral site game, that could be very even. So Washington State's a lot better than a lot of people gave them credit for. We'll see good old Crimson flying on College Game Day this week for sure. So give me Washington State Cougars to win and cover against UCLA.
If I could tell you a game to not put your money on, it would be this one. Because I truly can see it going any which way. I think UCLA is a top 25 team. I don't think Washington State is a top 13 team. It's kind of crazy they're 13. They're definitely a good team. Don't get me wrong. I lived in Washington. They're a good team. Should be top 20. But they're going on the road, and I know in the Pac-12, unless you're playing at Oregon's field, home field advantage doesn't mean the most. But they do have to travel, and UCLA is coming off a bye. I believe Washington State is too, though, right?
Yeah, both of them are.
Yeah, both of them are coming off byes. And I think this UCLA team has a lot more room for improvement than Washington State does. And seeing how they played against Utah, their offense was atrocious. I think they're going to come out and prove some people wrong. I feel like the whole public is probably taking Washington State to cover. I'm going to have UCLA to cover to win. Maybe not to cover now that it's 3.5. Yeah, I'll go Washington to cover Washington State to cover, UCLA to win. I think UCLA wins by 3. Again, comes down to the last play. But this is going to be a great game. 3 kickoff. Okay. There's so many good games between.
There's a lot of good games this week.
Noon and 3 and 3:30. So like I said, I would not put my money here any which way. I just have a feeling UCLA is going to come out and win.
Well, the last game we want to preview, and we'll do this one really quickly, because we've talked about this team a lot in the past few weeks. They've had some big games, and that's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish playing at Louisville. Sneaky 5-0 team in the ACC over there. Obviously Notre Dame 5-1 on the year. They have a tough schedule coming up. They play at Louisville and then they go and host USC. I mean, what a tough little 4-game stretch they've had. Obviously playing Duke and beating them last week and then losing to Ohio State the game before. But I do think this is going to be a lot closer game than people think. Louisville's a good team. They're under their first-year head coach. Jeff Brom over from Purdue, and they've also brought the Purdue quarterback with them, Jack Plummer, who's had a really good season. Now I think this is going to be the best defense he faces. I think it's going to be a low scoring game actually, and I think Louisville is going to cover this game, but I think Notre Dame wins. It's sitting at 6.5 right now. I think. Let me just make sure that was what I looked at. Yeah, 6.5. A small stadium, so it's not going to be that. It's only 60,000 at Louisville, so it's not going to be that bad of a road environment that Notre Dame's going to have to deal with. But I do think Louisville's a lot better than people give them credit for. Will be another low-scoring game that Notre Dame plays, but Sam Hartman's too much in the end. Notre Dame wins by 3 or 4, a field goal around there. But Louisville covers, Notre Dame wins.
Yeah, this Louisville offense is pretty good. Jack Plummer, like you said, I don't think he's good, but he has good stats, 1,400 yards. I know he has a lot of interceptions, but 11 touchdowns. Jamari Thrash, a transfer from Georgia State, has over 400 yards, almost 450. Notre Dame is way too much for them to handle. This Louisville team, much improved. Jeff Brom's doing a great job up there in Kentucky, but I just don't see them hanging in this game. I think Sam Hartman is way too talented. I think Audric Estime is way too talented. Their defense is way too talented. I think Notre Dame wins by 10. Maybe this game is close through 3/4, but they seal it in the fourth. So obviously I think they cover. I think they win. I don't think it's going to be a great game.
Wow. So we were together for the first 5 games. The last 2 games we kind of strayed away. So we'll have to look at that going into next week. They're definitely, I don't think any of those, a few of those may be on my best bets, but we're not going to take a look at the ones that weren't. But anyway, good preview section. Let's hit some week 5 uh-ohs, Jake. Give us a team that is now going to be added to this uh-oh list, or are they a repeat offender?
I think this is their first week. It's probably
Okay.
no, I think they were on it the first week. Give me Florida.
Yes,
Florida.
they're another repeat offender.
Okay, Florida was on it after Utah.
Yes.
Florida looked abysmal. They were on. We don't have it, but they were on the opposite of the uh-oh list after they beat Tennessee. They looked really good. Their defense looked elite. Looked like they could be a player in the SEC East behind Georgia. Then they go to Kroger Field and just leave their whole defense back in Gainesville. Oh, it was atrocious
They
to
didn't
watch.
get
We
on the
talked about
plane, I don't
Kentucky.
think.
Do what?
I said I don't think they boarded the team plane.
We talked about Kentucky a little bit earlier, just ran all over them for 329 yards. And their corners were getting picked on in the run game. I don't think people realize that. Jason Marshall didn't do great. Jalen Kimber, a Georgia transfer, didn't do great. Their whole defense did not look great. So that's my biggest thing. It even looked like a lack of effort, which is the biggest uh-oh. Because if you were just getting, bodied for 4 quarters, that's one thing. But it just looked like they weren't even playing hard. And maybe that's because it was a noon kickoff in Kentucky. I don't really know. But I was terrified as a Georgia fan watching this game. I felt bad for Nick and Ryan and my whole family for being Florida fans.
Well, I felt bad for Graham Mertz. I mean, dude went 25 of 30.
I know.
44 yards, and he did everything he could, and he had no running game to support him. He outplayed Devin Leary without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Devin Leary only went 9 for 19 for 69 yards, but it really looked like Florida, left their starting defense in Gainesville and hired Bishop Sycamore's defense to go play against Kentucky. I mean, it was a slaughter fest over there. And at Kroger Field, I mean, that place isn't really much of it's not a great environment. I mean, Florida, it's almost like just playing a neutral site game. So, yeah, I couldn't believe that Florida got gashed the way they did. It was bad. Credit to Kentucky, though. Credit to Kentucky. Too bad it only lasted a week for him, because this week's probably not going to be too good. Now I'm going to go with another repeat offender, and also a team that we saw on the uh-oh list after week 1, and that's LSU. And shoot, we may see LSU on the uh-oh list again next week if our predictions come true. But their defense also, Bishop Sycamore out there just with LSU helmets on? I have no idea, because it was bad. It was bad. Jackson Dart looked like a Heisman Trophy contender. I do think he's a great quarterback. Don't think he's one of those, though. And, I mean, Ole Miss put up 55 points, over 700 yards of offense against that defense. That secondary has been a problem, like we've said all year. And the front seven, I thought, would not be a problem, with Mason Smith and the big guys they've got up front, but it has been. It has not been a good unit for them. And Brian Kelly's got some serious looking in the mirror he's got to do this upcoming week before they go play Missouri at Missouri. And that's a little tough part of their schedule. But they still can make some noise in the West. I mean, they still play Alabama, but it's just, it's not been the year they wanted, and they're kind of wasting a generational, almost a generational style offense with that awful defense. I feel bad for Jaden Daniels. I mean, dude's been putting up insane numbers, Heisman numbers, video game numbers, and he just doesn't have a defense to back him up. So LSU, the second repeat offender on this list. So go ahead, Jake. What's next, number 2 for you?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a non-repeat offender, and probably the best team on this list, the Duke Blue Devils. And it's not an uh-oh because they lost. If they would have just lost how they did without the last 30 seconds of the game, in my opinion, they wouldn't be on this list. But Riley Leonard, I don't know if people know, Riley Leonard got hurt I stopped watching the game after Audric Estime had that touchdown with 31 seconds left. I stopped watching. He got hurt and apparently looked bad. I don't think it's as bad as it looked.
It's not.
I didn't even see it. I think he's out for 4 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. The biggest reason why they're still on the O list, their upcoming schedule, they play Florida State, on the 21st, which without Riley Leonard, I think it's an automatic L. They play Louisville the week after that, which we'll see what Louisville's made of this week. They could be good. They could be, a pretender. But those are two potentially losable games, especially without Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
And like I said, this team is really good. I think they have a great defense. I think they have a few players around Riley Leonard, but he is obviously the heartbeat of that team. And without him, I just, they could even drop one at NC State. They have a bye this week, but they play NC State next week. They could even drop that one. So I just think, it's not the loss that affected them hugely, because they were still in the race for an ACC, maybe a dark horse playoff spot. But now that they don't have their QB for four or so weeks, who's probably going to be a first round pick in the NFL draft, I think that really hurts them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm so glad it wasn't a broken leg for Leonard. That's what it was being reported as at first, but Pete Thamel kind of cleared that up, looking like a high ankle sprain. I don't really know exactly what they're going to do for that. I mean, you could do the tightrope surgery. Tua had a couple of them in college. It kind of it kind of prevent that from happening again. So I don't know if they're just going to take it, just rehab it or have the surgery or whatnot. But yeah, without him on their team, I can't imagine them being, anything what they've been. He is kind of, like you said, the heartbeat of that team. So they're a really good football team. We obviously both of us still have them in our top 25s, but without them, a season that could have been a dream season for them could turn out to be a disaster. Something that, and you got to feel it for that Mike Elko. I mean, he'll probably end up getting another job out of this because he's going to have tons of suitors after this season. But just for that Duke fan base, I mean, they're a basketball school. They've always wanted to be good in football, and they used to be back in the 40s. But this looked like a year where they really could contend for the ACC. And sadly, without Riley Leonard, I just don't see a shot they have against FSU. And I still think Louisville will beat them regardless of what they look like this weekend. So good pick for that. I also had them on my list. But my next team, I'm going to go with the UCF Knights. I don't know if you saw that fourth down play that their backup quarterback had.
Crazy.
That was absolutely insane. That was crazy. But they were up, 24 points at the end of the third quarter in this game. I need to check
27, I believe.
27 points. I mean, they were beating Baylor up, and this is not a good Baylor team. This was a 28-point comeback, the largest comeback in Baylor history. And this is one of UCF's first games in the Big 12, and I was very high on them coming in this year. But like I said, this Baylor team is not good. Blake Shapin's an all right quarterback. Besides him, I don't know another player on their team. I do think Dave Aranda is a good coach, and I think that he'll end up getting a shot at a better program one day because he's a very good defensive mind. But Gus Malzahn, I mean, you've got to wonder what he's thinking. Obviously, they don't have John Rice Plumlee. They have but their backup quarterback's pretty good player too. He played well in this game, and they've got obviously that Kobe Hudson, Javon Baker, former Alabama guy. They've got some guys over there that can play. McClain is the name of the quarterback for UCF, but they just a bad loss for them. They now sit with 2 losses. I had them really up high in the Big 12, and who's to say they don't go on a run, but it does not have the start that they wanted, especially at home against a Baylor team that's not good.
Yeah, that's the thing. It wasn't a good Baylor team. This Baylor team is bad. Who'd they lose to earlier?
They lost to Texas State. TJ Finley in Texas
State. They lost to.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like they had 3 turnovers and just happened to get upset. Texas State beat them and looked better than them.
Yeah.
So the fact that they blew a 27-point lead,
28. Yeah.
28-point lead to Baylor, that's scary.
Yeah, it's not good.
So it doesn't look too good for them. When's John Reese Plumlee supposed to get back?
I don't know. I don't even know what the deal is with him. I obviously haven't been paying close attention to UCF football, but I don't know what the deal is with him. So we'll just have to see, I guess.
Yeah. Well, my last team, their first time on the list. Give me Utah. Did I have them in my top 25? I think I took them out. No, I still have them. I don't really know why. I don't think Utah's a top 25 team. 2 weeks ago when they played UCLA, their defense is good. I want to get that out there. They have a national championship style defense.
They do.
Probably top 10 in the nation. UCLA, they held them to 7 points, but they only scored 14. And going up against Oregon State has good defense as well. But they only scored 7 against them. And it came with 5 minutes left in the game. So 55 minutes, they were scoreless. And again, their defense only held them to 21. So, I mean, my is for 2 different reasons. One, is Cam Rising going to come back? And then also, what's he going to look like if and when he comes back? So, I mean, we say they don't have a QB. You know, I have a lot of respect for Cam Rising. I think he's a great college quarterback. Who's to say he looks the same when he comes back from his torn ACL? Because he might not. And then also my for the second reason, kind of the same as, you know, the Duke Blue Devils. In the not this upcoming week when they face Cal, they also have a bye, just like the other Duke. They play Cal next week, and then following that, they face USC, which they didn't look great against Colorado, but still a top 10 team. They face USC on the 21st, and they face Oregon on the 28th. So going into those 2 games without your starting quarterback, I don't see a way you win either one of those with your anemic offense. You know, your defense is going to be able to hold both those Heisman contenders decently well, you know, not as well as you held UCLA and Oregon State. They're probably still going to put up 30. But without an offense and without a QB, I don't see a way this Utah team can win a 3rd straight Pac-12.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this Utah defense goes up against Caleb Williams and Bo Nix even more. I really want to see what Bo Nix looks like against a really good defense. I obviously think he's going to be really good, but you know, that Georgia game from last year still kind of sits in the back of my head when Georgia won 42-0. Now it was week 1, but you know, this, like you said, this Utah offense is anemic, and without Cam Rising, they have no hope or shot or chance at anything this year. No disrespect to Nate Johnson, because he's a tough kid. I mean, he really did hang in there against Oregon State. He was taking some tough hits. He was limping off the sideline towards the end of the game. Really, I didn't understand why he was still in, because, I mean, they were down 14 and they needed to throw the ball. And the best passing quarterback that's not Cam Rising on the team is Bryson Barnes. But they stuck with Nate Johnson out there. And so I think he's going to be kind of their guy the rest of the year. Obviously, great in the run game. But when you go up against a really good defense, you got to be able to throw the football. And Nate Johnson just wasn't able to do that. And he's not going to be able to do that this year. So it stinks for Utah. They're wasting kind of like how LSU is wasting a generational offense with a bad defense. They're wasting a generational defense with a bad offense. I mean, imagine that LSU offense with the Utah defense. I mean, that would be a very scary football team.
Be a good team.
Be a very, very good football team. Utah's out of my top 25 too. But yeah, I actually had them on the list as my 3rd team. So good section. Definitely agree with everything you said. I'd like to think you agree with everything I said for sure. Yeah. Now, here's something we're definitely not going to agree on, and that's our SEC quarterback rankings.
Do you want to do best bets before that?
No, let's just jump right into the quarterback rankings. Let's go ahead. We'll end every show with our best bet. So it makes me feel good before I go to bed, you know.
All right, let's start it from the bottom. Let's go 3 at a time.
Let's just go 1 at a time. Why not? Let's just go 1 at a time and see what happens.
All right. My last quarterback was my last quarterback. He's awful. I don't care how he played against Georgia. He's not good. Peyton Thorne, you know, he can't throw the football faster than I thought he was. More of an athlete than I thought he was. Look, for his 56-yard run, he looked fast. You know, obviously he wasn't fast enough to completely outrun Malachi Starks and Javon Bullard, but you know, looked like an athlete, but not a good quarterback.
Completely agree with everything you said. Peyton Thorne's last. It shows when he throws the football. So can't really say much else. Yeah. Oh, I'll do 13. I'll do 13.
You got it.
AJ Swan. Okay. He hasn't had a very good season. He's turned the ball over a lot more now. Obviously not playing on a great team. He does have Will Shepherd, and I don't understand why he doesn't just throw him the ball every time. At least the interceptions would look a little bit better if he threw it to Will Shepherd every time. But I mean, sucks for him because, like I said, plays on a bad team, doesn't have much talent around him besides Will Shepherd, and he hasn't been able to protect the football well this year. He does have a lot of touchdown passes, but you got to be able to protect the football, especially in the SEC, to win football games, and he just hasn't done that at an effective level.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you. We have the bottom 2 the same.
I think we'll probably have bottom 3 the same, but go ahead. Let's hear it.
I don't think we will.
Really? Okay.
My number 12 QB. I was very high on him coming in. He was in, whenever I gave my tiers, he was in my good tier, my number 2. Devin Leary
Wow. Okay.
has not looked good at all. Not even a little bit. Has been careless with the football. Maybe he proves me wrong this weekend. Maybe he shows up in a game he has to go win. But dude does not look good, and he has playmakers around him. He has a good running offense, has good wide receivers, and just hasn't done anything. And a lot of the time he just throws it up there and lets someone pick it off. I believe he has 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I just don't think he's looked good at all this year. I was very disappointed. Maybe it's just him playing in the ACC, and that's all he can do.
No, so you actually, when you said that, it actually made me change my pick. So I swapped my 11 and 12. So I am going to go Devin Leary at 12 as well.
Hey, let's go.
Just like you said, the guy who I have at 11, I think I need to pay a little bit more respect to, just for what he's done in the past. And I think you probably get it who I'm going to say. But yeah, Devin Leary, kind of like AJ Swan, he doesn't have a ton of talent around him besides Ray Davis. And that run game has really hit him being a problem to that team this year. Like I said with AJ Swan, you got to be able to take care of the football in the SEC, and he has not done it this year. And he just hasn't really been that effective in the passing game. So I'm going to go Devin Leary at 12. But at 11, the guy I swapped him with is actually the SEC all-time leading passer, and that's Will Rogers. I've got Will Rogers at number 11. He has looked abysmal, especially against Alabama. Now, a really good national championship caliber defense. But this new offense that they're running just doesn't really suit him. I think Mike Wright would be better for the Mississippi State offense than Will Rogers would, just because they really want to run the ball this year, and he is not suited to that style. He is an air raid quarterback. If they had the air raid, he'd be a lot higher on my list. But rest in peace to Mike Leach. Zach Arnett does not want to do what Mike Leach did, and for that reason, Will Rogers just hasn't gelled with this offense. And he, like we've said, doesn't have a lot of playmakers around him to help him out either. So Will Rogers number 11 for me.
I'm not gonna lie, you saying that made me change it as well, because I had Will Rogers at 11, and then I bumped him up one because I thought you were gonna make fun of me for having my guy at 10 now, below him. Yeah, I have Will Rogers. He was in my elite tier. I think I said he was the number 2 QB in the SEC behind Jaden Daniels, of course. And now he's sitting at QB number 11. This year has just not been good. I mean, I guess it's only because of the air raid, but it's just crazy to think about that, system could do that. And, I think we'll see that with another QB on this list. And kind of like Hendon Hooker last year, where, I guess it's just the defense or the offense they run in, because Will Rogers does not look good at all this year.
Yeah.
But my number 10, I think we might have bottom 5 all the same. Maybe not. I have Graham Mertz.
Don't have it the same.
Wow, higher than 10. He's been a big riser. He was my number 13 before the season. I think he's looked good. And I know he has good stats. I know he has a high completion percentage. The reason he's not higher on this list is because all he does is throw screens and throw at the line of scrimmage. They don't ask him to do anything, great or effective. But he's been decent for the team. They've done what they've asked him to do. So if he was on a different team, if he was being asked to do what Carson Beck is being asked to do, I think he would be back where he was before the season started. But since he really doesn't have to do anything, and can let his receivers and his backs do the work, I know he's not on a good team, but he's gotten a little bit of praise from me. There's some respect for him.
So number 10, I've got Max Johnson. And I think when you get to number 10, you get a lot of really good quarterbacks. I think the SEC has some good quarterbacks, not many great quarterbacks, just a lot of good quality. And I think Max Johnson, we talked about him a lot, especially heading into this game against Alabama. He's a very quality quarterback. There are a lot of teams around the country that would love to have a guy like Max Johnson, who A&M has the luxury of having him as their backup quarterback. I think Wegman may have ran the offense a little bit better, just because you can do some more things with him than you can with Max Johnson, just because he's a little bit more of an athlete. But Max Johnson's, like I said, smart guy, efficient quarterback, tough guy, and he can throw the ball. So he's only played in a game and a half this year. You still need to see some more out of him. But if he beats Alabama this weekend and has a really good game, he would shoot up my list, that's for sure. And then number 9, I've got Graham Mertz. I put Graham Mertz ahead of whoever's playing at Texas A&M, because he has surpassed my expectations. I did not think Graham Mertz would be as consistent as he's been. And I think consistent is the word you have to use when you say his name. Now, yes, he may be throwing some screens and things like that, but I definitely thought he would turn the ball over a little bit more than he has this year. And that Kentucky game for me, he was tough and he competed. 25 of 30 in that game, in a game where they had no run defense. He was really their only good player that entire game. He had a great game, and he only threw the ball to Ricky Pearsall 3 times in that game. So I think Graham Mertz is a lot better than people give him credit for. He has been consistent this year. He's surpassed expectations that I think Florida fans had for him. It's been a great year for Graham Mertz, and I only hope for the best. I hope he continues to have a great year because he deserves it.
Yeah, and you did mention it. One of my best bets last week was -7 over -7.5 rushing yards for him, and he had -2. And you see the negative there, but he eluded like 6, probably not, maybe 4 sacks. Should have had more than -2 rushing yards, but he did a great job. There was one time where he was getting brought down, and as he was, he had the wherewithal to flip it to his back right beside him. So I mean, yeah, he's been a good game manager for them. The reason I have everyone else on this list, especially Wegman and Max Johnson, is because they can throw the football a whole lot better than he can, even if they have put the ball more at risk than he has. But my number 9, it was so hard to keep him here. I wanted to keep him dropping. And he was your number 1 QB coming into the season, Joe Milton. He's not good. I've spent a lot of time talking about him. Don't know the hype. Don't know why he's at 8 or above for you. I think you should have dropped him more. He was hard to put at 9. I had him at like 11, and then I had to think harder about it. Whereas if he wasn't in that Tennessee system, which you and I both know, makes the QB look better than they are. Imagine he is in Mississippi State's room right now. Imagine he's at Auburn. Imagine he's at Vandy. He is the worst QB in the SEC, in my opinion. So anyway, my number 8, like I said, Max Johnson, Connor Wegman. I have them right together. They're my number 8. I think they bring the same amount of skill, not the same skill set. But they've been pretty good for Texas A&M. They're not world beaters. They're not going to win the game for you probably. Max Johnson might. I might be eating my words again, but they're solid. I think they're exactly average in the SEC.
Yeah, when I think of them, I think steady and I think consistent. But number 8, Joe Milton, had him at number 1 in the year. Had him as my Heisman guy, my Heisman pick, and it really was just because he's an uber talented guy, and I thought that system would really help him out. But he has made some really poor decisions, and I think what's his face? What's the coach's name? Heupel. Heupel's been pretty frustrated with him, at least it looks like, on the sideline to start this year. So yeah, Joe Milton. I put him at 8 ahead of Graham Mertz because I know he still has the ability and the talent and the wherewithal to be able to be a really good quarterback in the SEC. He just hasn't been able to put it together still. And at this point, who knows if he will? I mean, we're about halfway through the season. He hasn't yet. We'll see. But Milton sits at 8 for me. At number 7, I'm going to go with my guy, Jalen Milroe. I got Jalen Milroe sitting at number 7. He's been a pleasant surprise in the passing game to me. He's turned the ball over a few times. He's only turned the ball over 3 times this year. I mean, people act like he turns the ball over every game. But, I mean, last game, he's as I've said all year, he's progressing. He's getting smarter. He's getting better. He's running the offense better. He is taking sacks every now and again where he should be getting the ball out. But he is the best running quarterback in college football, hands down. He makes so many plays. I mean, there's so many broken plays we've had this year that he's turned into a first down or a touchdown. I mean, the one that comes to mind was the first touchdown of the season, the horrible snap that he fielded like a ground ball and ran it in from like 30 yards. I mean, I know it was Middle Tennessee State, but it doesn't matter who you're playing. You should be getting tackled on that play. And no one else in college football could have made that play but him. Obviously, still want to see a little bit more from him mentally in the game, psychologically, his processing. But he's starting, like I said, getting better week in and week out. So I've got Jalen Milroe at number 7.
Sutton, our list might be very, very similar. I also have Jalen Milroe at 7. He's risen. I know for both of us, you had him in your bottom tier. I had him in my tier 4 coming into the season. He's risen a little bit. He's looked good. You mentioned it, best running quarterback
Wow. All right. He's getting Lamar Jackson treatment now. Okay.
Best running quarterback in college football. Not close. I don't even know who would be 2.
Never thought I'd be saying that as an Alabama fan either, that Alabama would have the best running quarterback in college football.
Yeah, he's looked elite. I mean, but with that, you give up a lot in the passing game. I know he has a great deep ball. He has a lot of arm talent, but he can't layer the football that well. And like I said earlier in the season, kind of the same as Anthony Richardson last year, not great at processing. Not, in my opinion, and I don't mean this in an awful way, not a great quarterback where, he can make his reads, he can help everybody out on his offense, doesn't put his team in the best position to win, in my opinion. But in college, that's not really what you need. So Jalen Milroe could end up leading his team to a national championship, could look like one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I don't think he is, but he is that type of playmaker because, his legs give him that. And, all you need for, like I mentioned with his deep ball, all you need is a receiver to have one step, and that could be it. And 7 points could be the difference between them winning a natty and losing. So
yeah,
he's a great college quarterback. At my number 6, you might have the same, I think, here. I have KJ Jefferson, another guy. He was in my tier 1 coming into the season, and he's dropped a little bit. And again, it's hard to determine what's on the system and what's on them because he has no one around him outside of Raheem Sanders. That's it. But, I mean, dude just hasn't looked very good, and he hasn't looked like his typical running self. He's not a fast guy. But typically he's very powerful. I was watching him play against A&M, and they would have him run on like 4th and 2s and things like that. And he'd get stopped by one guy, which was very surprising to me. And so that's the area I think has been the biggest concern where he's still good. Don't get me wrong. If this was a tier list, he would be my good tier, but just has not been what I thought he was.
So at number 6 for me, I actually don't have KJ. KJ is a top 5 quarterback for me. At number 6, I've got Carson Beck. And I think he's grown, like you talked about a lot. I thought he grew a lot in the second half against Auburn. Obviously, I liked what I saw when he took that huge hit, but still threw a perfect ball. It also helps a lot to have Brock Bowers on your team and to be surrounded by a bunch of talent. But yeah, I think he's kind of like Milroe, both of them. And we compared them all year, the very similar situations, different players, obviously, but similar situations where they have had limited starts over a long career. I mean, Beck's a senior, Milroe's a junior. Older guys that haven't really played much, but they're both progressing. They're both really good leaders on their team. Obviously, I think Beck's a much better passer than Milroe is. I do like Milroe's deep ball better than I like Beck's deep ball, but intermediate and short accuracy I do value a little bit more just because it's what you're going to be throwing a lot more. And obviously Beck has a lot better talent around him than Milroe does, which is kind of crazy to say, but it's Alabama, Georgia. But I mean, that's just kind of how it is. He does. Milroe has a better running game, but Beck's been able to play a lot, has played well this year. He's done everything Georgia's asked him to do. He hasn't really turned the ball over that much. So I think he'll continue to get better. I don't think, like you said at the beginning of the year, first round talent. I don't see that. I definitely see him as a solid quarterback in the SEC, a good quarterback in the SEC that does his job. I mean, and that's all Georgia needs. That's what Stetson Bennett did. And I think that's what Carson Beck's going to end up doing. He's just going to do his job. He's not going to be anything special, but just do his job. So I've got Carson at 6. And at 5, I've got KJ. KJ's been a guy that's been able to do it a long time. And you've seen him have some talent. You've seen him not have some talent. And this year's the year I think he doesn't have it. But he shows you that he is able to keep it close with LSU. And I know that their defense isn't great, but you're still battling an opposing offense and one that's quarterbacked by the best quarterback in the SEC. I think both of us, it's pretty easy. Everyone knows who number 1 is going to be. Yeah. Jaden Daniels. But KJ Jefferson, I mean, he was able to go toe-to-toe with him. And we've seen what that Arkansas offense looks like when he's not in there. And it is a completely different look. So KJ means a ton. And really, if you're looking at these teams, of which quarterback means the most to their team, I think it might be KJ. It might be KJ means the most to his team. Because think about it, Jaden Daniels has Nussmeier behind him. Nussmeier is a very good quarterback. And obviously, he's not as good as Daniels, but he's a great quarterback. The only one that I would think that you could even compare is Brady Cook. He's the only one that I think is a team that really needs that starting quarterback. They don't really have anyone behind them. Everyone else kind of.
I think Spencer Rattler too.
But then again, Spencer Rattler, they don't have enough around him for it really to matter, I think. So it doesn't. I don't think it really matters either way. But I guess the same could be said with KJ. But I think KJ he is that heart and soul of the Arkansas team. I don't think South Carolina really has a heart and soul, but KJ is the heart and soul of that Arkansas team. He's what gets that offense going. And like you said, he hasn't looked the same running this year, but he's a better passer than people give him credit for. And he's definitely a dual threat guy. And I just think Arkansas would miss him a lot if they didn't have him.
Yeah, my number 5 QB, I got Jackson Dart. He's gone up a decent amount after the LSU game. It's been an up and down season for him, in my opinion. And again, like I mentioned with KJ, it's hard to tell what's on the system and what's on the QB because I don't think he's an NFL quarterback at all. I think it's just schematically what Lane Kiffin gives him. And it's hard to say because I think if they need him to win a game, I don't think he can do it. If it's an elite team. Or a good team. I don't think he can do it, but he is the top 5 QB in the SEC. I want to get that straight. He's definitely a top 5 QB in the SEC. I just don't think he's that great. And again, maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe somehow Ole Miss goes and wins the SEC West somehow, some way. Don't know how. I guess it could be pretty easy if A&M wins this week and then Ole Miss beats A&M. Oh wait, no.
Yeah.
No. Bama would still only have one SEC loss, and they get the head-to-head. Anyway, Jack, good QB, not great. My number 4, I have Carson Beck. And I disagree with what you said about he just has to do his job. For the people, I know you haven't watched a lot of Georgia. I mean, you've been to a lot of the Bama games, so you haven't really had a shot. If you've watched both South Carolina and Auburn, he won the game for us. Where Stetson kind of just had to not lose the game, he was the reason we won. And let me read off his stats because I think a lot of people don't really know. He has just under 1,500 yards. That's more than Cam Ward, who is your Heisman leader, maybe behind.
He's played one more game than Cam Ward's played.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. But he still has 100 more yards than him. And I know he doesn't have a lot of touchdowns, but they don't let him throw to the end zone a whole lot. I mean, he moves the ball really well to the 20, and then we just run the ball a lot inside the red zone. It's one thing I want to see changed. But he has 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His first interception, I will say, it came against one of the cupcakes, and he just threw it up. I was glad. I mean, it was a good interception for me because it was like one of his only deep shots in the first 2 games. And then the one against Auburn, that was a bad interception. But I mean, we mentioned it. I think he grew up a whole lot against Auburn in the second half and looked elite in the second half. He looked like a top 2 QB in the SEC if he plays like that for the rest of the year. I don't know if he will, but he has shown he's capable of it. And yes, you mentioned he has Brock Bowers. He has the best position player in all of college football. There's no argument against that. Brock Bowers is so good. But I don't think a lot of people know he was without his wide receiver for his first 2 games. And he's been without his wide receiver 1 up until last game. And he was still so wide receiver 2 was Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint. Wide receiver 1 is Ladd McConkey. And Ladd McConkey was still kind of out last game. He only played like 10 snaps or so. They were all
critical third down plays.
Oh, believe me, I know. That's why I say kind of, because like, I mean, when he was in there on third downs, Ladd was great and he was getting the ball to him, but he wasn't really playing on first and second down really at all. So this week it's kind of going to be more of the same. So you've been without your wide receiver 1 for most of the season. And I mean, we still have great wide receivers. You mentioned we have a lot of explosive weapons around him, but 2 of those are transfers. And one doesn't know the playbook really. He knows it more, Rara Thomas, but Rara Thomas did not know the playbook coming into the season, like at all. He's learned it more. And then Dom Levitt, he's really good. I want to see more from him, but yeah, I think Carson Beck has been really good. I think he's been elite in that second half against Auburn. I think he can do that the rest of the year. We'll see.
At 4 for me, I've got Jackson Dart. And this is just still puzzling. Why did the heck did Spencer Sanders transfer to Ole Miss? I don't understand. I mean, I thought Jackson Dart was going to be the starter regardless of Sanders going there.
To be fair, whenever we gave our SEC QB rankings, we did it in January to like each other. You had Spencer Sanders, not Jackson Dart.
Well, in January, I heard there was talk saying that Spencer Sanders was going to be the starting quarterback. So I was like, from what I was hearing from their workouts in camp was Spencer Sanders is going to be the guy. But then when we got to fall, all I heard was Jackson Dart's outperforming him. Spencer Sanders isn't playing very well. that could have been one of the worst decisions a quarterback has made, because this is his last year of eligibility, and he's not going to get a red shirt. He's already gotten red shirt. He's already used his COVID year too. So he does not have another year of college football. But that's besides the point. Jackson Dart had a great game against LSU. Obviously, not a good defense, but he traded shots with the best quarterback in the SEC and ended up winning the whole thing. So obviously, he didn't have a great game against Alabama, but he still played fairly well against a really good national championship caliber defense in Alabama. We've said that plenty of times. But he's got some pretty solid weapons around him too. And he's also been very great this year in the rushing game. I think that's what surprised me a lot. When Quinshon Judkins hasn't been able to get any traction, Jackson Dart's been there to pick up the offense. At one point, he was the leading rusher on the team for the season. After the LSU game, he wasn't. But before that, through 4 games, he was. And Ole Miss has been able to lean on that passing game when they want to run the football. So that's really impressed me from Dart this year. That's why I've got him as a top 5 quarterback. And then number 3, I've got Spencer Rattler. Dude gets so much hate for no reason because he is a very good quarterback. All he's got is Xavier Legette. And he's got maybe the worst O-line in the SEC, probably one of the worst O-lines in the Power 5. I mean, they have not been very good at all this year. I mean, they've been getting ran through. And sadly, Spencer Rattler has been on the bad end of that. He's been on his back a lot this year. So he's uber talented guy, got all the talent in the world. Xavier Legette's been his only guy, and he still looked good. He had Georgia beaten in the first half. Georgia was able to mount a comeback in the second half and beat South Carolina. But Spencer Rattler is no slouch. He's a great quarterback. That's why he's a top 3 quarterback on my list. I expect him to be a top 3 on your list as well. And obviously he is. You haven't mentioned him yet, so. I'm sure you got more stuff to say about him, especially since you were able to watch him play a full game.
Yeah. My number 3, I got Brady Cook, has been great. You put him in your tier 5 coming into the season. I put him in my tier 3. I tried to tell people he was really good, and it's just because he was on Mizzou. People didn't think he was good. He's finally getting some love nationally. He's been really good. He is really good. I kind of wish he was on Georgia. I love Carson Beck. But I kind of wish Brady Cook was on Georgia. I wish I could see him suit up in the red and black. I think he's been really good. And he does have Luther Burden there, so that helps a lot. He has another 5-star receiver. I said his name, Theo, whatever his name is.
Theo Weiss.
Also number 7, I don't know his name. He's sneaky good.
Yeah, he's good. I don't know his name either, but he's good.
He went off against Auburn last year.
Yeah.
Anyway, you mentioned it. Brady Cook, pretty good. Spencer Rattler, I have at number 2. Like you said, has no one around him. Has a high school offensive line that they must have a vendetta against Spencer Rattler because they just let people walk through.
They're sabotaging him.
Dude, they have to be. They must prefer the backup or something because they're bad. Juice Wells hasn't been what I expected him to be, but like we said, Xavier Legette, probably top 3 SEC wide receiver. He's been really good. And you said it. I saw him in person at the South Carolina game. That first half, they scored 14 points and they moved the ball effectively. Our defense did not play bad. You probably didn't see it, but some of the throws he was making were insane. He went 16 for 18 with 180 yards. He was playing out of his mind in the first half. Second half, didn't go his way, but he was playing so well. And he did the exact same against North Carolina. Against Tennessee, he didn't, but, it was what it was. And then obviously I'll just go ahead and say it. Number 1, Jaden Daniels, not even close. Best passer, second best runner behind Jalen Milroe, but he's great in the run game, great in the pass game. He was my number 1 QB coming into the season, going to be my number 1 QB coming out of the season. He's been great.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I am very surprised at how well Brady Cook has played and how much Missouri really needs him. He has been fantastic for this team. He has thrown it with accuracy. He's been efficient. He's thrown the deep ball well. He's thrown the medium tier ball well, the short ball. He's been able to run the ball well. And what's crazy to me is he's been banged up all season. I mean, every game week, he's questionable or very questionable or doubtful going into the game. And he always suits up and plays. And it looks like he's not even hurt. So he has been awesome this year. The Kansas State game really stuck out to me. I mean, he went toe-to-toe with the former Big 12 champion last year, ended up winning the game for them. And I think he's going to do it again this week. I think he's going to beat LSU. And, he's just been great. Obviously, really good talent around him, which is great for Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz. But, if you had told me, a few months ago that I'd have Brady Cook as the second best quarterback in the SEC, I would have been really surprised. But honestly, number one, Jane Daniels has surpassed my expectations. Remember, the tier I had for him, I had him in a tier by himself, which was tier 2 in my early, which was I thought he was overhyped for the Heisman, but he has definitely wronged me. I mean, he is if his team was good, he would be. I mean, I still think he's worthy of a Heisman. Now, to be fair, he does have two of the best receivers in college football, or excuse me, in the SEC. Brian Thomas.
No, college football was right too.
Elite neighbors. Both of those guys are great. So that definitely helps. And it does kind of help that their defense sucks because he's getting more time on offense to play. He's getting more possessions on offense. So it's going to inflate his numbers a little bit, especially if you're playing a shootout every game. I mean, they really are. But I mean, there's really nothing. He can make any throw on the field. He's a great runner. I would like to see him slide more because he's been getting absolutely killed. He got murdered by Ole Miss, one of those hits. And then there was another game they played this year where he got absolutely killed. So we don't want to, well, I'd be all right. I never want a player hurt. But believe me, I'd be okay if Jane Daniels missed the Alabama game. I'd much rather see 13 back there than 5. But, Jaden, find out a way to slide, man. We don't want you to die out there. We want you to, be able to represent the SEC well. And, I mean, I do kind of want to play LSU at full strength and get revenge from last year. But, great quarterback last year. Maybe was he the top quarterback in the SEC last year, do you think?
Probably.
Anthony Richardson, but he really wasn't top.
Anthony Richardson wasn't good. He was better than Bryce Young last year. So I would
say you still got to put Bryce Young as your number 1 quarterback. I mean,
probably.
So, I mean, still probably like number 2 quarterback in the SEC last year, number 1 this year. So
actually, no. Hendon Hooker was better than him last year.
Hendon Hooker, yeah. So but still top three.
And look, I know it's
no.
Don't
Don't
hear. Don't
no. Don't.
I'm not saying he is.
I'm shutting down that argument right now. Stetson, great quarterback. He was not better than Jane Daniels last year.
Stetson was a stud last year.
Oh my God, he was not
absolute stud. I mean, he beat him in the SEC championship.
Oh my God! That's
all I'm gonna say.
You cannot make that when we're talking about strictly quarterback play. You cannot make an argument where it goes on when the entire team. Obviously, Georgia's team was much better last year than LSU's team, but Jane Daniels was better than Stetson.
You just broke up in the middle of that, but we won't get into that. Let's go ahead and jump over to best bets. Let's kind of go through this fast. This show has been a little long, but it's been great. I think that was a great segment. I'll
tell you what, you're gonna love my first best bet.
What is it?
Georgia is gonna cover the 14 and the 15 at Kentucky.
You took mine.
I got that as one of my best bets. So there you go. We'll start off with one that we both have.
Yeah, I only have 3 others now. So I'm gonna go ahead and give my other one before you take that one too. Yeah, obviously I agree with you. I said it earlier. I think they win by 21 pretty easily. And I didn't want to bet them before. If I had money to bet, this is a game I would actually put money on. Whereas before, I was never confident in a line, no matter who we were playing. But this one I am, just for some reason. I feel it. We're going to be 1-5 against the spread after this week. I have Oregon State, my team, covering against Cal, 9.5. They do. I almost said we do. They do play at Cal, but I have Oregon State covering 9.5. What about you?
I like that. Yeah, I definitely like that. I'll say Oregon State covers. All right, Michigan versus Minnesota. Michigan is a 20.5 point favorite, so big line. But Michigan also 5-0 against the spread this year, and they've played very consistent. They are scoring in the 30 to 45 range all season, and their opponents have scored in the 3 to 7 range all season. So Michigan will cover the 20.5 point spread. I mean, Minnesota is about the same competition they played all year. So I expect a very similar, consistent performance from Michigan. Even though they're on the road against Minnesota, Michigan will cover the 20.5.
You said it's 20.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have them covering. Minnesota is not a good team at all.
No.
Michigan probably going to win easily. And I don't have any other. I only had 2 games, so go ahead and give your other.
Yeah, so I've got 2 more games. Colorado on the road versus Arizona State. They're 4-point favorites. Arizona State is going to be without Jaden Rashada, who's been their starting quarterback. Drew Pine is their starting quarterback. And just for reference, he was the backup to Tyler Buckner. So he's hot cheeks. And they're going up against a Colorado offense that's going to score a ton of points. Arizona State's defense isn't good. Colorado's defense isn't good either. But Arizona State's offense is not good at all. And Colorado's offense is. Colorado's probably going to boat race Arizona State. I think they win by 21 or 28. And the spread's only at 4. So I'm going to go Colorado. That's my lock of the week, is Colorado covering the 4 at Arizona State.
Yeah, I will say Drew Pine isn't playing for Arizona State. It's some guy named Trenton.
Drew Pine is playing for Arizona State. He's their backup quarterback, but maybe they benched him last week. I don't know.
I think they did. Trenton Bourget, I think that's his name. He had over almost 350 yards last week. So I think he's going to be.
They must have benched him. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's going to be their starter. I also have Colorado covering that. I think they got a lot of momentum from the second half against USC. I don't think Travis Hunter is going to be back, but I don't think they should really struggle against Arizona State. They're not a good team. But then again, they struggled against Colorado State, so who knows?
And then my last game is I have Arkansas covering against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is favored by 11. Arkansas is on the road in Oxford. It's going to be homecoming at Ole Miss, actually. Fun fact. But Arkansas showed you they were able to keep it close with another bad defense, and that's LSU. And I think they'll keep it close again. I think this will be kind of not really a shootout, but they'll definitely keep it close with Ole Miss. And I think they lose by a touchdown. The 11's kind of high. So I'm going to say Arkansas is going to cover against Ole Miss, but they'll still lose.
That is fair. Ole Miss has already passed Bama, so I don't think they really have a game to look forward to. I think they cover against Arkansas. Arkansas's, like we said, not a very great team. Ole Miss, I think, has a lot of momentum coming off of last week. So give me Ole Miss minus 11.
Okay. Start us off with a player, Jake.
Yeah, both my player props come from the same game, the game of the week, in what I think is going to be a shootout. So my first one, I have Dylan Gabriel. Also, my lock of the week is Georgia versus Kentucky, if that wasn't obvious. My first one, I have Dylan Gabriel. His line is 270.5 passing. I'm going to hammer the over. Like I said, I think he wins the game for them, but nevertheless, even if they lose, they're putting the ball in his hands. They don't really have much of a run game. So Dylan Gabriel going to be throwing the ball all over the place. Texas doesn't have an elite secondary. Their front seven is really good, but they don't have an elite secondary. So I think Dylan Gabriel doesn't have the world's biggest problem throwing the ball against this defense.
I agree. I think he will hit the over 270.5. I agree. And my first player is also going to be from this game. And I hope I'm not taking your guy because this is a Texas receiver.
No.
Who is it?
Xavier Worthy.
Okay, I'm not taking him. I've got A.D. Mitchell at
Okay.
66.5 receiving yards. I'm going to hit the over. I definitely think A.D. Mitchell, he had 144 yards receiving last week with a touchdown. I definitely see him in the 80 to 90 range this week, maybe even higher, because I think Quinn Ewers will throw the ball a lot. But I also think they're going to really like that running game with Jonathan Brooks. I think it'll be a pretty balanced game, but I do think A.D. Mitchell, kind of their second receiving option, obviously behind the guy you're about to talk about. I'm going to go the over for A.D. Mitchell on receiving yards. 66.5 is kind of low for a home run threat like him.
Yeah, I think he definitely hits over as well. Transfer from Georgia. Love him. I wish he was still here, but, he's a great receiver. I have Xavier Worthy, 76.5 receiving. I have him over. I wanted to also go Quinn Ewers over. I was just a little scared. His is 293.5, I believe. But I think both receivers go over. I think it's a huge day for both of them. Hopefully Xavier Worthy gets like 200 because I have him in a prize picks for full season stats. What about you? Do you have him over as well?
I'm actually going to go under for Worthy.
Okay.
I think he may be just for the sake of disagreeing, but I think he could be used in more of a decoy role. Jordan Whittington could have a big game. Isaiah Nayer could have a big game. I do think A.D. Mitchell will have another big game. But I like Jatavian Sanders in this game. He's a mismatch nightmare at tight end. Obviously, probably the second best tight end in the country. Not close to Brock, but I do think he's the second best tight end. And I think Worthy has kind of a decoy this week.
I thought he was questionable.
I don't know if he is. I don't know.
I think he might potentially be injured. But the reason I just not agree in a rude way, but like I don't agree is because it's going to be a shootout and third downs. I think they're going to try to get Xavier Worthy the ball. because he is their best receiver. He's better than A.D. Mitchell, and he's a slot receiver.
I will say, though, their third down target has been Whittington. I mean, this year on third down against Alabama, they were going to Whittington. I think Worthy, while he is their number one receiver, he's their home run threat. He's their big play threat. I think they want some sure hands on third down. And I think the two guys that have the sure hands are Jatavian Sanders and Jordan Whittington. And I think my roommate Robert could attest to that. He's watched every Texas game this year. So
Jordan Whittington, he's like 6'4", 6'5", right?
Yeah. He's like
huge. Yeah, that's why, because Alabama has a great defense, very fast, very physical. But I think the reason they targeted him is because he's huge and he can just boss on a lot of people when you can't really beat Bama with speed. But this Oklahoma defense can be beat by speed. And so if it's 3rd and 3, I think they try to get Xavier Worthy the ball the whole time.
Yeah, I'll just disagree with you just for the sake of disagreeing. But my last player, you're gonna think this is a pretty funny stat. Luke Altmaier. Against Nebraska, half of an interception. I'm gonna go over. This dude sucks. He throws about an interception a game. Nebraska doesn't have a bad defense either. So I'm gonna say Luke Altmaier does throw at least one interception. So I'm gonna hit the over on the half interception.
Hold on.
Illinois against Nebraska.
Whatever you want to talk about, ramble for like 30 seconds. I want to look at.
Well, I mean, there's really nothing else to say. I mean, Luke Altmaier, I mean, this year he hasn't been a very good
7 interceptions,
7 picks. I mean, there you go.
It's 5 touchdowns.
So
it's 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a very good quarterback. He's not very accurate. Definitely not a guy I want with the ball in my hands against a Nebraska defense. So.
To be fair, they played Kansas and he had 2, and they played Penn State and he had 4. He had 0 against FAU, 0 against Purdue. I think he's learned how to keep the ball in his hands. Give me the under. Just for the sake of disagreeing as well.
Okay, well, we'll just go for the sake of disagreeing on one of each of our players. So,
because we only had 3 different picks. We got 9 picks this week.
But you know what I think deserves a round of applause? Just it being the best bet section back. I think it deserves a round of applause for both.
Hey, look,
watch this week be terrible though.
No, look, I will say we're not Texas around here. As soon as we win a game, we don't say we're back. Okay, we're not back. We have to be consistent like Texas is.
Yes.
We have to go like 3 straight weeks, and then we can officially say it's best bets.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give it to you.
So I'm hoping I go 9-9, and I'm hoping you go, I guess, 6 for 9. So
okay. All right. Well, successful show again, guys. Halfway through college football after this Saturday. Can't believe it, and I can't believe that we're already at 15 episodes. I mean, what a time! I've had a great time talking football with you, man. It's been great. I hope all of our viewers have liked it as much as we have. Being able to put together 2 shows a week has been pretty fun, especially with a pretty busy college schedule for both of us.
Hey, yeah, I was about to say, also, I want the viewers to understand, this isn't something easy that Sutton and I do. We do it twice a week, and we're super busy. We're in 2 different time zones. It's 12:22 right now where I'm at. The latest we've gone, I was up at 1:30 my time once, so it was 12:30 your time. This isn't easy. And then there was one time we had to do it in the morning on Friday morning. I think you woke up at 7 to do it.
Yeah.
So this isn't easy for us.
No, and then you gotta make you gotta edit the audio on Adobe Audition, and then you gotta post it on your podcast. You gotta edit everything. You gotta make sure all the comments and everything are like how you want it. So yeah, it's definitely not easy. And you also came up with a graphic. So good graphic.
Hey, you recorded, so
I do record. So
good on both of us. Good on both.
We're both getting it done. But again, we couldn't do it without our. I mean, we would be able to talk without you guys listening. I mean, we probably do this anyway, but we thought, why not share our views anyway? But we do thank you guys for listening every week. I know that I have friends and family that listen. I'm sure Jake has the same. But if you guys just subscribe, maybe tell some other friends about it, and kind of share the word about our podcast and YouTube show, that'd be great. But again, have a great weekend, guys. Enjoy watching some really good football.
I got one quick thing. If you're watching right now, if you're listening, whether you're on podcast or YouTube, go to the YouTube video and comment. I just want to see how many people there are. So whatever you're doing, just go to the YouTube video and comment.
And drop a like while you're there too. And you can do the same thing on podcast too. If you're listening on podcast, you can do the same thing. So again, guys, thank y'all. Hope you have a really good weekend. Some great games on. So y'all need to be on the couch all weekend. No weddings, no going out to like friends' houses unless you're watching a game. No, none of that bull crap. Y'all sit on the couch, prop your feet up, and watch some TV. But more importantly, some college football, because man, a lot of great games this weekend. And with that being said, roll Tide, Jake. Have a good weekend.
Go Dogs.